Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Pilot Lawyer Podcast. Thank you for your attention while this important legal information is reviewed. What you hear should not replace consultation with an attorney and should not be considered advice for your situation. On behalf of the Pilot Lawyer and your entire crew, it's our pleasure to have you aboard.
That was us waiting for Bailey to do the opening. Welcome, aviators, to the Pilot Lawyer Podcast with us, the Ison Brothers, plus Bailey. You're here for what we like to do best. I don't know if it's what we like to do best, but
I could think of some things I like to do better, but
you're what we do from 9 to 5, navigating pilots and those who want to become pilots through the FAA medical certification process. As we say around the office, if you don't laugh, you cry. And for the next 30 minutes, we hope to navigate you through a process that's otherwise difficult and makes you want to cry. So laugh with us. Begin.
Bailey, what are we talking about?
I forgot. So sorry.
Oh,
It'd be
man.
one thing if
It's been
she
a
were.
great edition.
It'd be one thing if she were quiet and had enthusiasm for the subject matter and job. But now it's just quiet.
Where are those crickets? Ah, you ruined it.
Just press everybody.
Alex's hand is just flopping down the board.
I think Alex enjoys having Bailey here because
Take some of the pressure off.
it's weird though that it's like you and me. I'm pointing to Christopher right now.
Yeah.
It's like we have to have a straight man. It seems like, you know, it's like
Why they got to be straight?
Well, I'm straight. But quit untrusting me with your eyes. Here's what we're talking about today. Conditions that will just never get you a medical certificate. So, Christopher, can you give me a little flavor of what that looks like? I'm talking.
Sure.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Let me give you. I'll tell you what. This is totally unscripted, right? This is
No way.
the pilot lawyer podcast, unscripted. So
It's never scripted. That's the problem.
I know, but we're going even further off script today. So
Buckle up, Bailey.
when the FAA determines whether or not you are eligible to hold a medical certificate, it is all based upon a regulatory standard. The regulations that set the standard for medical certification are found in 14 CFR Part 67. Within Part 67, it's broken down into first-class medical certification standards, second-class medical certification standards, and third class, right? Within those sections, the regulations are further broken down into topics of medical concern, such as vision, hearing, cardiovascular, neurological, mental, general medical conditions. And so each one of those sections sets the standard by which the FAA has to review a person's medical history, disclosed medical history, to determine eligibility. When you look at those regulations, there are certain medical conditions that are explicitly listed as being disqualifying. They're specifically disqualifying medical conditions. Examples of those would be things like epilepsy, angina pectoris, coronary heart disease that's required treatment, bipolar disorder, psychosis, diabetes. I think I said that right. Anyhow, so there's things within the regulations that are specifically referenced, and those are things that if you have that legitimately have it in your medical history, the FAA is going to come around and say, hey, sorry, you're denied because you don't meet the standard. Now, there's other catch-all provisions within the regulations, within those types of medical conditions, where the condition that you have, that you disclose, may be disqualifying at the discretion of the federal air surgeon. And in those situations, it's generally going to be based on case history and the opinion of the appropriate qualified medical judgment relating to that condition that would allow the federal air surgeon to make a finding that the person's unsafe to operate an aircraft because of that insert condition, whatever it may be. But that condition, and a good example of that would be like ADHD, anxiety, depression, things along those lines that are not referenced by name in the regulation. So with that foundation, I've said my piece. I've said all I'm going to say for this entire podcast. In fact, I'm going to walk out now and go home. Anthony, take it away.
Let the record state that Christopher is still sitting here, and that if he does get up and leave, I'll be ending the podcast indefinitely. Well, that's a beautiful layup for the thought of this episode, which is that we're not really talking about disqualifying medication or disqualifying conditions, in so much as there are some of these conditions that are disqualifying, for which you can still get a medical certificate so long as you can establish eligibility for a special issuance authorization. The idea being that a special issuance authorization is designed for individuals who don't meet criteria to hold a medical certificate because they have a condition or have a medical history that's suspect for potential aeromedical consequence. Therefore, monitoring to reduce risk to an acceptable level to the federal air surgeon is deemed appropriate. In that capacity, again, we're not talking about disqualifying conditions as being those conditions which you can't get a medical. You can get a medical certificate with a disqualifying condition in your history. You can have a special issuance to waive the fact that you have this disqualifying condition.
So, are there conditions that you can have and never get a special issuance for?
That's the question.
Is that what this podcast is about?
That's this episode is about. It's not what the whole podcast is about. You need to start delineating between the podcast, an episode, and what the content of the podcast is.
I'm not sure what this podcast is about.
Yeah, yeah.
But this episode is about...
Yeah, it's like after having a consultation with somebody and you give them the whole spiel, and then it's, so what do you do?
What's your role in this?
Yeah. Crazy.
I'm the thinker.
Yeah. Anyhow, what we're talking about today
What's Bailey's role in this?
Bailey's the most, I've found is Bailey's the most important part of the whole thing.
It is true. That's not a facetious comment.
Yeah.
Without Bailey, this whole thing would run amok.
She just started a few weeks ago.
She's managed to get this
explains so much.
This train back on the tracks.
Correct. Don't flatter me.
Whoa, her first words.
Oh, man.
And they were deprecating.
Dismissive.
I'm glad I didn't say defecating.
You just did.
All right. So the idea here, we're talking about conditions that you just, what's that noise? What's that noise?
Oh, it's my watch. Why did it make that noise?
Are you having a heart attack?
No. It restarted.
Seems like more and more people are determining that they're having a heart attack from their watch than I've ever heard before in my life. Okay. So these, again, let's reset. We're talking about conditions that it's going to be
Where's my Rolex?
Record state that Alex isn't wearing a Rolex. It's a Timex at best.
It's a Garmin.
Oh, I don't care. Here's what it is. Conditions that you're just not going to be able to get a medical over unless you maneuver appropriately and are able to establish legitimately such maneuvering. So let's identify. There are conditions that are disqualifying. The FAA is not going to give you a medical if you have that history. Then those same conditions, among them, there are conditions that you're never going to get a special issuance for ever. The problem being is that if you have that condition, it's done, essentially. What are those conditions? Well, I'll name a few, and then maybe Christopher will name a few, and then maybe we'll all join hands.
Leave me with the easy
sing
few.
The rest of them. So one that comes to mind is epilepsy.
Picking the low-hanging fruit here, right?
Well, I thought that was the harder one. Epilepsy. Now, allow me to correct myself after all that. I have seen cases with epilepsy get certified in situations where an individual has been diagnosed with epilepsy. They've not had a seizure in decades. They're not taking anti-epileptic medications, anti-seizure medications. It requires a lot of data to establish, hey, listen, this person's not going to have a seizure suddenly, despite the legitimate diagnosis of epilepsy. Bipolar disorder. As it stands right now, if you have a legitimate diagnosis of bipolar disorder, especially if you're being treated for bipolar
symptoms related to it.
Yeah, or with a bipolar medication, you're not getting medical. If you have psychosis, a history of psychosis, you're not getting a medical. some more nuanced ones that you won't see in the specifically disqualifying medication. I don't know why I keep saying that. Specifically disqualifying conditions, but are the catch-all conditions that you so aptly identified would be attention deficit disorder, that you can't meet this criteria for the fast track protocol for ADHD, or you have legitimate cognitive deficiencies that you can't establish are not otherwise erroneous. Come back to that. And probably one that's catching the most people right now, in my opinion, is major depressive disorder recurrent that doesn't meet criteria for the antidepressant special issuance authorization protocol. So in other words, you have major depressive disorder recurrent, and the only way to mitigate that concern is through special issuance authorization and while you're on an antidepressant. And if you don't meet the criteria to be issued a special issuance on the antidepressant, then you're kind of in a pickle.
Has your FAA medical certificate been denied? Are you concerned you may not be able to get a medical certificate from the FAA? Are you at risk for FAA action for failing to report your medical history appropriately? Call the pilot lawyer at 1-855-FAA-1215 to discuss your options for getting the FAA to issue your medical certificate and get you flying. We are happy to evaluate your case and discuss with you a plan for presenting your case to the AME or the FAA. Aviation law is all we do, nothing else.
I guess in that situation, you'd have to establish that even though you don't qualify for the SSRI pathway, you can still mitigate against their perceived risk for recurrent symptoms.
Yeah.
Through other acceptable
means,
like, engagement with a therapist on a continued basis.
Right.
Showing stability.
That leads me beautifully to my next point.
Oh, man.
Which is to say, I say and have said within the past few minutes, and I'm sure Bailey can pull up the minutes of this podcast episode and tell us that these are conditions which are not going to be certified ever. However, if you can establish that you didn't legitimately have that condition in the first place, number one,
it's a misdiagnosis.
It's a misdiagnosis, in other words. You never had it.
I never said that. Don't you ever say I did.
Pull it up, Alex, and then play it into the microphone. While Alex gets that prepared for us. These are conditions that you don't have, you never had, and it doesn't exist. Or in some very subtle situations, you can say, yeah, I guess maybe I had it, but it was the result of some other condition.
It was secondary.
A beautiful example, Bailey. You'll find this in our practice.
Substance dependence.
Yes, substance dependence. There's no greater joy in my life. I honestly mean this. There's no greater joy than when we can determine that someone who's been diagnosed with psychosis or bipolar disorder was only demonstrating the symptoms of those conditions as a manifestation of substance dependence. Happens more often than you would think. But you'll see individuals that have been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and the FAA looks at that and they throw up and they say, well, there's no way we're ever doing this. Or they have psychosis. Well, there's no way we're ever doing this. But.
And don't you ever say I did.
Go ahead.
But come to find out.
It was poorly timed and only half the clip, Alex.
I did the best I could, okay?
And you failed.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so you got substance dependence.
So you have substance dependence, but really...
So you blame the psychosis on the substance dependence, and then you treat the substance dependence, and therefore...
The risk for psychosis is non-existence.
So you're treating the underlying condition.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
God. Just completely screwing it up here.
Man.
Anyhow.
Oh, God. Keep going.
What are we going to hear next?
You don't want to know.
So there might be times when you have these specifically disqualifying conditions that would preclude someone from ever being able to get a medical, but you're able to establish through the appropriate qualified medical judgment that...
Well, who would give that?
Well, it kind of depends on the situation, on the medical condition. For mental health concerns, it's going to be probably a HIMSS psychiatrist or a HIMSS neuropsychologist. For a neurological condition, it's going to probably be a neurologist. Wait, what?
Perhaps.
Why are you mouthing that to Alex over
I was
here?
just making sure he wasn't mad from where you blew up at him.
Oh my God.
Sensitive Nellies. So anyhow,
Bailey, is all
That's
this
beautiful.
sinking in? Are you picking up what we're putting down?
If you tilt your mic down a little bit.
she's talking so much today. And she's laughing into the microphone. I don't know what to do with her.
Getting better.
So that's good. Well, you know what's one I would have added to the list not too long ago? Type 1 diabetes. That used to be one that so many people were not able to fly because of it, but now they have a special issuance protocol for type 1 diabetes that you can actually make it happen. Now, they're very strict with that. Very strict, but it's definitely doable.
Would you say that even though there are specifically disqualifying conditions, there seems to be more often than not a workaround?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, take the major depressive disorder recurrent for which you don't qualify for the antidepressant protocol. There have been times where we've been able to say, hey, yes, this person has this condition, but, we can mitigate it through other things such as psychotherapy, as you were just saying. Now, I would say more often than not, like major depressive disorder recurrent, the evidence will eventually show we don't really have this. This was just something that was thrown out there. I think I've heard a statistic from someone who's credible that it's about 50% of the time the FAA is able to overturn a determination of major depressive disorder recurrent. I would say the same thing with like bipolar disorder. That gets thrown around a lot. I've seen more cases lately where somebody's had a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. We've been able to get them through by saying, hey, well, did they really have bipolar?
Sure, it's in the records, but is it legitimate?
Yeah, is it legitimate?
What
I think,
say?
But I would say something where you've been taking lithium for 30 years, Lamictal, lamotrigine, and you're still taking it, and you have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder or, psychosis, I think it's going to be a hard sell.
Let's say
So let me say, even if you're able to kind of try and make some of these arguments, it was an illegitimate diagnosis in the first place, the fact that you've been treating it for decades, it's going to make these workarounds.
Okay, well, let's say you have psychosis, just because it's an easy one.
Well, that's not too hard for me to imagine.
Sure. Don't you know that I know that you know
what the actual diagnosis is? Go ahead.
So you have a specifically disqualifying condition in your medical history. The FAA won't consider you for a special issuance. You've asked and they said, no, sorry. Do you have any recourse at that point?
Well,
I guess it depends on what is being specifically denied. Is it a specifically disqualifying condition, or is it a condition that is at the federal surgeon's discretion? Because there's going to be a kind of Kind of
so if you have a disqualifying condition, and let's just say you have a disqualifying condition, you have psychosis, and you have no argument other than please just let me have it. You can't go to the NTSB and petition that because the NTSB doesn't. That's something that has to be issued at the discretion of the federal air surgeon because you have it. Now, if you're going and saying, I don't have this, don't you ever say I did, then you're going to the NTSB to say, hey, the FAA is saying I have this or had this. I don't have this. I've never had this.
I told them I don't have it.
Correct.
And they're just erroneously assigning it to me, or it was erroneously assigned to me and they just won't appreciate that.
But if it's, I have it. I know I have it. I think I have it. And you're saying, but they should be able to give me one like special issuance. That's where the special issuances are only at the federal air surgeon's discretion.
So if you try to go to the NTSB because the FAA says, no, you can't have an unrestricted medical and you can't have a special issuance, you say, well, fine, I'll take it to the NTSB. I'll see you in court. You're not going to get too far if you're trying to get the NTSB to give you special issuance because they don't have the jurisdiction.
Now,
what if you have a condition that is not specifically disqualifying?
Well, if it's not specifically like major depressive disorder recurrent.
How about it?
Major depressive disorder recurrent, you can say, well, this condition in the regulation says, it's a condition which at the federal air surgeon's discretion could potentially cause an aeromedically significant concern, essentially.
But it has to be based on case history and the opinion of appropriate qualified medical judgment.
Correct. So you could go to the NTSB and say, hey, based off case history and qualified medical judgment,
The FAA erroneously denied
I'm
my
not going to be.
application.
I'm not going to be unsafe while I'm flying. So there are some conditions where it's, do I have it or not? And then there are other conditions are, even if I have it, am I safe to fly or not?
Of course, in those situations, like with the major depressive disorder, if you've got your experts that have evaluated you during the medical certification process, and the best they could say is, yeah, follow them on a special issuance, and they couldn't unequivocally say, good to go, regardless of the history, you're not still probably going to be all set up that great to go to the NTSB, right?
Correct.
Because your expert's saying, well, you should be on a special issuance.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. 'Cause there's some case law that says if your expert saying that you need to be on special issuance, you're not eligible to be at NTSB anyhow. So
what you do in the process from the very beginning,
it matters
what you
so
provide
much.
to the FAA needs to be accurate, needs to be logically thought out and presented coherently.
because if you just
And it's not a situation where you want to necessarily, you're not necessarily trying to hide stuff.
you're not
from
hiding
them.
stuff. No, not necessarily. You're not trying to hide stuff. You're not trying to.
But there's arguments that could be made.
There's arguments, to be
Legitimate
made.
arguments that could be made.
I think especially in psychiatric concerns, it seems like it's such a subjective woo-woo, hey, it's going to be this or that. I think your mom's in the field, and I apologize for the slight. But I was looking at Bailey as I said that. But it's a bit woo-woo on, it seems to be, what are the diagnoses? I mean, they're pulling the stuff out of papers. It's not like they're looking at x-rays and so on and so forth. That being said, let's say you've got psychosis, okay? It's not a stretch for some of these people.
You made that joke already.
I'm just trying to hammer it home. Make sure in case the listener was distracted as they were turning left on the Euclid Avenue, I wanted to make sure they heard it as they made it safely to their destination moments later. We're losing the audience and ourselves. When we lose ourselves, that's
when we lose Bailey, that's when we get worried.
She's feigning enthusiasm just to get through the probationary period. So we've got this situation where you've got psychosis and you've got some argument to say, well, the psychosis diagnosis was 10 years ago, but I can be monitored through, therapy. I can do, write letters to Santa. I can do all these things to identify that I'm stable and the FAA can monitor me. Right? I can do all these things. And the FAA is still saying no, but they're not really providing a reason for why. Then, in those circumstances, you can't go to the NTSB and say, I don't have psychosis because you got psychosis. But you can go to federal court, district court, and say, hey, wait a second. The FAA is acting arbitrarily and capriciously. These are not words that I would use in normal parlance. So these are legalese words. I'm not just saying those words. These are words that
I never said that. You never said
right.
You also have to see the hand gesturing.
Why isn't Alex laughing?
The hand gesturing also makes that work.
Yeah, it makes it work.
If only we had video on these things. People could
cheap.
Oh, man. That would be a problem.
What do you think, Bailey? Should we have video? I think it would make your character make a lot more sense. That being said, you could go to the district court and say, hey, the FAA is being arbitrary and capricious by denying this application. I provided good information to establish why I would be safe. And they're just sort of saying no cavalierly. They're not really studying it. So you could try that. I would say there's very limited times where that's going to be successful. Because usually the FAA is going to march somebody in there and say, oh, yeah, well, here's why we can't do it. So if you were to leave the listener, Christopher, with one thought on having a disqualifying condition or conditions, if you were listening into this podcast episode, looking for some hope with your diagnosis of bipolar disorder, for example, what would you tell that person?
It's maybe doable. Seen it happen where people get a medical despite having that history in their records. It's not common, but it may be doable depending upon what information you can put in front of the FAA that puts you in a favorable light and, how they digest it and what arguments you might be able to make therefrom. So it kind of goes to all those other conditions that are specifically enumerated within the regulations and even those that are disqualifying at the federal surgeon's discretion. It's all going to come down to the information you put in front of them. You know, is it from people that know what they're talking about because they have the appropriate credentials to opine on an individual's aeromedical safety relative to that particular condition, right? So it's not like you're going to go get a podiatrist opinion for some heart-related issue because, well, you know, sure, the doctor, but, you know, not the appropriate qualified type of doctor. Maybe you go get a cardiovascular doctor's opinion for your heart issue, but, you know, what kind of training and experience do they have? Is it one that is pretty novice and green around the ears, or is it somebody that has training and experience in aeromedical cardiovascular concerns? You know, it's things like that, right? So it's really about matching the right, you know, connecting the dots appropriately for the issues.
I love it. Love it. Well, that pretty much wraps things up today. There will be no cockpit conundrum.
This whole episode has been a conundrum.
Correct. Bailey, what you seen anything interesting in your weeks working at the pilot lawyer? Or I don't know. At the pilot lawyer. Ison Law Firm? No.
What do you mean by interesting?
Our eyes just got wide.
Oh gosh. I don't know what the meaning of the word is. We'll come back to you on the next episode.
I probably won't have an answer then either.
Think on it. Alex, have you seen anything interesting working at the Ison Law Firm?
All sorts of stuff. I wake up to interesting every morning.
So does your wife.
Yes.
I'll say this much. Just do our performance reviews live on the air. Alex, your work. Go ahead. I'm just kidding. It's real good. Well, the performance reviews will be done off air. You've logged another uneventful half hour listening to the Pilot Lawyer podcast. And even though we'll stand over Bailey's shoulder while she puts her resume out on LinkedIn, and she'll deny knowing us in public and elsewhere, we're the Ison Brothers and Bailey at the Ison Law Firm. Good day.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.